Hey guys, welcome to Splints and Whiskey. Sam Patrick here with my incredibly good buddy. I guess we could say that we go way back.
Go way
Mr.
back, dude.
Way back, dude. Mr. Ricky Ditzel here. So Ricky and I, we spent some time together working in the 160th SOAR many moons ago, and Ricky has gotten to see my adult temper tantrums firsthand when Josh Gamerick decided to put HPMKs on every side of an ISU 90, but hey, that's neither here nor there. It's all in the past now, man. So Ricky spent some time over at the 160th as a special operations flight medic there. We got to cut our teeth together over in Afghanistan, but now Ricky's doing some great things and setting conditions for the next generation of special operations medic moving into medical school. So without further ado, my friend, I turn it over to you. Oh, one thing before I do that, some business matters. I got to thank our sponsors, Life Autonomous Care Consultants, for making this podcast happen. So if you guys have any simulations or medical supply needs, check out Life Autonomous Care Consultants and they can take care of you. All right. Now that we've done the business stuff, I turn it over to you, my friend.
Thanks, dude. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm Ricky Ditzel, chairman and co-founder of Special Operations Forces at School of Medicine. Happy to be here. And I'll never forget one of those temper tantrums during that exact example of looking over at my good buddy and saying, I feel like I don't to throw this like ball at him while he's doing this. And then my buddy's like, this isn't fake, dude. He's really angry. And I was like, good call. And then he broke a table. So he was right. So that was good.
I don't remember breaking a table. I
Yeah,
think
break a
that's fake.
table.
That's fake news. Yeah, don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. So yeah, you're working with Soft Assam. So
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so we're a North Carolina-based 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We help any current and former special operator. So if USAS SOCOM says that you were special operations personnel, then you're eligible to come to Soft Assam. You have to have gone through some type of selection process. So it can't you can't just be the support to the support to the support and apply to Soft Assam. You have to be a selected individual. So what we do is we help any of those folks become physicians. So our goal is to take care of you from before med school, through med school, residency, and beyond, with the ultimate goal of creating 100 new soft physicians within the next 10 years.
Oh, nice,
And then
dude.
we'll reevaluate our goals from there.
Well, I have a guy that I need to tie into, so I'm doing work with the
For
Honor
sure.
Foundation as well, and I have a candidate. So yeah, I'll definitely have
Nice.
to I'll have to pull you guys in the fold with what we're doing at THF since we're doing the exact same target population. And you yourself, you're going through medical school right now, is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah, don't
Yeah, yeah,
let's not
yeah.
sugarcoat that. So where are you at these days, and how far along in the process are you?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm at Rush in Chicago, and then I'm about to start my third year, third out of fourth year in 2 weeks.
Nice. So almost,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
almost there, where you get to go into residency and realize, like, oh no, I still have no life. Well,
Yep.
it's a long road, man, and I like super proud of you for jumping into that. Like, I definitely was like, it's a long time. I'm bored. I get bored easily,
Yeah.
Um, but to be fair though, you like again, you're a very humble fellow, and that's one thing I appreciate because you're still doing a ton of work on kind of like the neuroscience side of TBI, correct?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, what you been working on that side of the house these days?
On that side of the house, really been more on the been really fortunate to be a part of some of the guidelines developments with some organizations looking at assessment-based tools. So, there's a big argument in the TBI space right now. That's a really good argument, at least from the military perspective, is traumatic brain injury a medical problem or is it a human performance problem?
Right.
And if you're going to SOMA 2025 next week from when we're recording this, or a week and a half, there's going to be a lot of talks about this exact subject matter, which is, you know, at what point is TBI something we need to manage with a medical provider, and at what point is TBI something we can manage with human performance angle, like physical therapy,
Right.
cognitive specialists, excuse me. And so I've been working on some assessment tools for that, guidelines wise, working on some gender-based research. So there's no data on female service members with traumatic brain injury
Uh,
out there. No one's focused entirely on our female service member population. I think that's a huge problem. I think it's a huge problem from a PPE development perspective, a
yeah.
gear perspective. I can give you a simple example. So Newsflash, women have been in combat forever, for those who don't
Weird.
want to believe it. And just because that we didn't have a policy stating that women couldn't be in quote unquote combat arms roles
Right.
didn't mean they weren't getting TBIs. So women have always been in support roles such as driving trucks, mechanics, combat engineer, support, MPs. And if people recall, there's a lot of IEDs in Afghanistan,
Yes,
and you
sir.
had to drive to get places and deliver
Yes.
supplies. And a great example of the tomfoolery with that is, especially in a conventional unit, you have to have a bun if you're a female. And then if you
Right.
have a bun, we're going to give you this cool helmet called an ACH
Mm-hmm.
that has no room for that bun to be
Right.
under it. And then we're going to wonder why your PP is failing in a gunfight or an explosion. So
Right.
these are things I'm really passionate about. I have a really great team working on this project with me. My co-principal investigator on this is Melissa Givens.
Oh,
So
nice.
couldn't really ask for
A
someone better.
legend.
Yeah, the the
A little
the
bit.
actual legend,
Yeah,
the
the
actual
legend.
legend. Yeah,
Well,
triple
that's
board certified, and the list goes on.
no big deal. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know
no,
we are. It's pretty awesome to see what you're doing and to be like, well, you're on trajectory to become a legend yourself, and then, but right now the access and placement that we have around like these legendary people in military medicine, not just military medicine, just medicine and in
yeah,
general is awesome. And well, like yeah, think about the first one of the first big HRs of the Iraq War was Jessica Lynch because their
right,
convoy went a little haywire. Like it's
right,
yeah, like
exactly.
yeah, well, you see that in female trauma medicine as well. Like, oh, it's just trauma medicine, but when you have female patients in the military, like I know some of the stuff that Liz sells, like is the female simulators, and it's like, yeah, because people like we have made it so it's uncomfortable for us to treat somebody as a human being because of
Correct.
certain considerations for training or like the culture of respect we've built in the military makes it hard for us to turn that off and like, oh no, we need to do life-saving interventions, and sometimes that requires to make people trauma naked in public.
Correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, like it's funny to think about some of the massive blind spots we have in the data. Like so that being said, like I know there's a whole bunch of talk. Are you using AI at all for like scrubbing EHRs and data scrapes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's no AI that I have or that I'm aware of publicly that can scrub an EHR, which is miserable.
Right.
So with my traumatic spinal cord injury research that I do at medical school, you know, we reviewed 276 patient charts and we're looking at like 60 variables per patient. So that's a lot of math. And that's a rough process. That is a man hours
Yeah.
process because there's no AI to pull it. And then the EHRs aren't designed to rip medical language really. And the other, or I'm sorry, data variables. The other issue is charting is not an objective. Charting is a skill and everybody
Yes.
has their own flavor. And AI at this point can't really break through that and pull that data. So there's a lot of man hours that have to go into that. So no, where I do use AI and research is Open Evidence came out not too long ago, which is a basically a smart
Right.
PubMed.gov.
Okay.
So it's like a LLM, but for pooling research. So you could be like, hey, give me the current state of the science of tourniquets and massive hemorrhage. And
Right.
it'll pull the articles for you, and then it'll be like, and it'll give you a mini summary. And then you can say, you could ask follow-up questions, be like, well, what's the
Right.
gap between studies 1 through 6? And it'll say, oh, the current gaps are,
Right.
and that's a really powerful tool.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the things. Like for me, like I'm obviously I have my own opinions about AI when it comes to uh, being used in creative processes, but when it comes to data aggregation and analysis, I'm like all right, there is so much potential that has been yet to be unlocked, and
Yeah.
because like yeah, we're medical evidence-based medicine, like it's a challenge, and you're in the midst of it, like going through medical school, seeing the struggle of some of the blind spots in the data, and well, you're on the leading edge of trying to help fix that, but it's like so much of what we're doing is guesswork. So like
Yeah.
on your TBI stuff, I want to go back to like how you were talking about TBI, whether it's a medical or a behavioral health or like I think the biggest thing that you're hitting on is that TBI management is a holistic approach, and Like I
Yeah.
know my own experience going through Intrepid Spirit at Madigan, like I had cognitive therapy, speech therapists, all this, like a full team working on this stuff because it's not just a one size fits all product.
Right.
Um,
It's not a one size fits all product, and it's not in isolation, at
mhm.
least in the military population. And this is where I get controversial, so I'll just say it.
Hey man, it's a podcast. This is what we do here.
Yeah, it's what we do. I am very big on putting onus on the military structure of failing to recognize TBI for years and
Right.
years and years and years, and then failing to put people in place to help fix this problem. And then where I'll put onus on the end users and failing is that there's no TBI in isolation because our end users love to drink, our end users hate to sleep, our end users love to pound out energy drinks and other unhealthy habits. And the problem is when you look at those things in isolation, they can all cause problems. And when
Yep.
you put them together with a head injury, it is very, very difficult for even a multidisciplinary team to say, this is from your TBI, this is from traumatic history, and then this is from alcohol
Right.
use. And we kind of have to fix all of them in order for you to really maximize
Yeah.
everything.
And that's where like the human performance aspect comes in.
Yeah.
Like I, as you look at the NFL, you look at pro sports teams, and they have kind of pseudo cracked the code on this, but it's still like the beautiful thing I like about professional sports is like there's still a human with human variables at the end of the day that like you're not a robot, so they're not going to perform the same way. So teams have understood that if I invest this much effort into unlocking human potential, I have better athletes. You've seen this with US SOCOM. Like,
Yep.
is the preservation of the force and family still the term that they're using at SOCOM, or is it something different?
I've definitely still heard that term in like meetings. Readiness is a big topic in other meetings. So
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So like, there's a lot of work being done in the military, but like, since this podcast, we focus kind of like on the entire military, not just SOF,
Yeah.
and also first response space. Like, we've kind of cracked the code in the soft community, but man, on the conventional side and the first response space, everybody's still playing catch up. And to be
Oh
honest,
yeah.
it's expensive
It's extremely expensive. Extremely expensive.
because yeah, and that to me, it's where like, hey, I wish we could do what the Seattle Seahawks does for their players, for everybody in the service, but it we have to figure out a bridge of like, all right, so actually speaking of that, for some of the projects you're working on, are you guys looking at like lost man hours, cost of train, like what are the financial fiscal costs of not taking care of this problem? Have you guys looked at that at all?
Yeah. I personally haven't looked at it. There's people that do look at that exact topic at very high places in the warfighter brain health sphere.
Right.
And there's actually a project I just submitted a fellowship for looking at policy influence on this problem. And I'm going to be trying to look at VA disability costs as well. So I think that's going to be able to be used as a proxy to say, like, this is how much it costs the taxpayer
Right.
over a lifespan if
And
this problem's not taken care of.
and that's like when I look at, because we've had many conversations of
Yeah.
hypotheticals downrange, and like
Yeah.
for me, yeah, when I'm trying to go to a line commander or a maneuver commander or somebody in Congress, like just like when our unit's MTO changed, our manning document for our unit changed, it was because of data. Um, I think you're like looking at the VA cost, but also too, it's like how much time are service members being pulled out of their functional position because we're not taking care of this problem.
Right. Right. The other on the flip side, the challenge that is, and I'm part of this problem is, we're trying to fight for ways to diagnose and detect early. How much more time are they going to get pulled away
Right.
if we start over-diagnosing without a negative outcome? So,
Yes.
hey, you're on the gun line, you just shot your mortars, you peaked the either the PSI, that the impulse was too high in that explosive. We're going to pull you off the line for X amount of hours, and your phenotype is a resistant type, and you have no effect. But we don't have the data to say that you have an injury or not, but
Right.
we just pulled you off that line. So by not creating the right test as well, we're also potentially creating more man hour loss
Yep.
and training loss.
And that's kind of the balance with medical. Like military medicine, like I think I talked to Dennis Lyons about this. We were at AMSUS and I asked a question of hey, what's JP 4-02? And I get people like it just happens to be the guiding document that does we go seizure.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah, TBI seizure, I'll blame that. But it's like military medicine forgets that while we are here to like support the health of the warfighter, ultimately the goal is to make sure that we have combat power.
Correct. To reduce risk.
Yes, and balancing that risk and like allowing people to make decisions based off what's best for their formation. Like,
Yes, exactly.
and I think that's the big thing, like that we see the pendulum shift wicked hard to the left and the right based on the season. Because like yeah, my for instance, I'm an airborne school in 2008. I have my first two exits. When I hit the ground, it was feet ass head, knocked myself out, regained consciousness, packed my parachute, freaking ran to the turning point, then went and did it again and knocked myself out again. So like two loss of consciousness events back to back that I never got treated for.
Right,
And like
right.
I think the issue is like while I still did a 21, 22-year career, like how many like could I have performed better or even like could I have gone longer had I wanted to? Um,
Right.
and I think that's where like some of the work you guys are doing, like I wish there was the silver bullet of a biomarker that you could pull and say,
Yeah.
hey, you have like we know your levels are off. Here you go. Speaking of that, what work are you guys doing? Like, is there an initiative to try to like get the military to pull baseline levels, like say at initial entry, so that way we can have that tangible trend down the like at post injury.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to define the term baseline
Right.
from a policy standpoint and from a like logistical flow. So you have to like we look at the basic trainings and the boot camps and we say, oh well, this is a perfect test bed. They have to go through this. They're all going to be there, blah blah blah. And then something you're passionate about would be then, okay, well then what does this do to the drill sergeant who's only home 2, 3 hours a night as is, and
Right.
now we're making the baseline cognitive assessment, or is it a rotating team, blah blah. But the skinny to that, without going on a tangent, sorry, is
Uh,
yes, there's a lot of discussion on what does it mean the baseline, the end user. So right now, from Warfighter Brain Health, what was implemented was the ANAM. The ANAM was
yeah.
supposed to baseline everybody. End users came back and ANAM is not the solution. And that's recognized and people at the higher levels are like, okay, we get it. We hear you. ANAM's not the solution. What goes in instead of the ANAM is the massive, massive challenge.
Right.
And then what is that biomarker? And we don't have enough data right now on anybody to say what that biomarker is. And I don't care, maybe I'm misspeaking. I don't care what anybody says. There are mRNA biomarkers that are coming out that are extremely incredible. There are lysosomal biomarkers that you can't get from peripheral blood that are probably the most accurate. So that's a challenge. And then there's these ones are decent. And those are the ones everybody's latching onto and who's like around the space, but not like really deep in the space and saying, well, just pull GFAP and just pull, NFL or, which is neurofilament light protein, and then
Yeah.
UCHL1, which is a ubiquitin protein. And let's just use those three on everybody. And it's just, we'll make the same mistake again if we just rush this, in my
Right.
opinion. So yes, baselining is really the goal, and then figuring out when to serially assess those tests again. And then the follow-up from that is to then say, when do you intervene?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and that's like yeah, again, because like all right, I have all this data, but what does it
Yep.
mean? Like,
What does it
and that,
mean?
I
Where
think
does it
that's the
live?
yeah, and my thing too is like we think like baseline, like so. I think that's the issue with me with like normal ranges on lab tests and vital signs and all this stuff. I'm like, all right, cool, that's like fine and dandy to like give you some left and rights, but like I look at all the labs that I got pulled when I went through Intrepid Spirit when I was like 15 or 16 years in my career. To me, it's like yes, they're within normal limits, but how did I start out? Like
Yeah.
what is my actual normal, or what was my clinical normal before I had any incidences, and then measured off that. Like testosterone, for instance, like all right, oh that's the buzz hormone, but it's like all right, I don't know what your level of testosterone was when you started, but we're just going to base it off of kind of normal, which
Yeah.
is not always the most accurate, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Test is an interesting subject. I'm not on the test train fully, to be honest, as
Mhm.
the from a TBI perspective. Um, the HPA axis is very interesting. It does things extremely well, and then your HPA axis is also very reactionary and not um, it's not a planner. It doesn't think ahead. It
Right,
kind of just adjusts based on what's going on. And so I think if test fixed all TBI, then we would be there by now, to be
right,
honest, with the amount of doctors that and the amount of scientists and doctors that care about this subject who have no bias, no skin, there's no congressional person telling them no.
right,
Um, I think test would have been figured out by now. And I could be wrong, but that's just where I stand. And I've talked to really smart people and I've tried to convince myself that it could be the right answer. Does it help? That will make you feel better? I think it can help for certain things. I think at certain stages of people's lives, it can be really beneficial for what their personal goals are.
right,
But from like a healing the brain aspect, I don't know if that's the answer.
right. And I think too,
Yeah.
it's like again, we want an easy button,
Of
like,
course.
and
And we
I
want to
think
feel good.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And as you brought up, like, hey, our overconsumption of caffeine, the use of alcohol, the use of compensatory self medications. Let's be honest, that's what we're
Hmm.
doing. I think like I think the ultimate thing is we there has to be like, the goal should be happy balance in life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're never gonna solve all these problems. We're not gonna be able to wrap people up in bubble wrap and say, hey,
No.
but it's like, all right, like being aware of the damage that we're causing potentially, but also too like the big one is like everybody reacts differently. Like I and unfortunately like no, actually yeah, so CTE I blanking on what it actually stands for, but chronic
Chronic
traumatic
traumatic
encephalopathy.
encephalitis.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Which I've
Is
studied.
it what was the buzzword for a while? Like, do you know if there's any progress on being able to diagnose that without post-mortem brain slicing?
Progress. There's progress in the sense that people are looking at PET scans with tau protein, because tau is what makes up the pathognomonic morphologic signal change in the postmortem brain tissue is made of tau. So
Right.
I've looked at a lot of CT brains with a microscope. I was very spoiled to work in the Crary lab for a number of years.
Nice.
And from a clinical perspective, that team, the team out of Boston that really is the lead in CT, came back and they came up with a clinical term. So if you're exhibiting signs of what the traditional CT has been defined as, they have a diagnosis, and I think it's TES or something like that. I can't remember. I think it's traumatic encephalopathy syndrome, where it's the clinical version of, hey, there's a syndrome where you're showing symptoms of what we think would be CTE, but we can't diagnose it. So PET tau has been argued, and then some really fancy MRIs they're trying to develop, but nothing definitive from
Right.
my understanding right now.
Well, I guess my next question too is then like because you look at like the Junior Seaus, the Aaron Hernandezes of the world, that like, is there anything we can do to treat it?
Dude, that's the billion, trillion dollar question, probably $1 billion question.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. Because we don't know. When I worked for John Crary, a question he'd always brought up, he started off in Alzheimer's research. He's very smart with tau, which is why I love researchers because they pick one protein and become experts in that one protein.
One
Psychotic.
single thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, is at what point was it protective, and then at what point did it become a problem? Are
Right.
the plaques in Alzheimer's actually the problem, or were they neuroprotective the entire time? Are the scars in CT the problem, or are they neuroprotect were they neuroprotective from
Right.
something else we can't see? And that that's what's really like that's what keeps these guys going
Yeah.
is trying to figure that out. But I don't know, man. Um, my ultimate goal for TBI, especially with the military, and I've talked to end users about this, and I've been bored with this since I was on active duty. I used to say this to our doctor we worked for, was I'm just fighting for informed consent.
Right.
So my goal is if you're going to do a high risk job that you're implicated to have more explosive and blunt trauma than others, at whatever age you come to that job, I want to not, call it a contract. I want to lay a document in front of you. I want to say this is the risk that you're agreeing to beyond death in combat
Right.
from repetitive and chronic usage of these systems. Do you still want to do the job? 9 out of 10 folks are going to say yes
Right.
because they live for this job. So they sign it. And then you set a timeline every 2 years or say every reenlistment pattern. If they're going to stay in that job, they have to then go through the same process. And it says, you're going to continue to fly an explosive platform. Do you want to eat that much charge?
Right.
If yes, and then it's not just a you're going to do this job, move on. It's here's the risk, here's what we understand, and here's the things that this organization that we are trying to mitigate the outcomes, but we cannot guarantee that you won't have a negative effect. That's my ultimate goal with all of this because to exactly your reason, I can't put people in bubble wrap. I need explosive and lethal platforms.
Yep.
I need 19-year-olds that want to rock mortars and do the damn thing. I need kids to jump out of planes, and
Yep.
I need people and to do the job. And just like you need NASCAR drivers to go real fast in a circle, like we don't know what chronic vibrations doing to those guys'
Right.
brains. Like you can argue that for a lot of these careers. So my goal is informed consent with support and dialogue. And I've surveyed a lot of end users from 18-year-old Ranger mortarmen to pilots with 20-year careers. And when I've presented that solution to them, they all said they would, and this is anecdotal, all
Yeah.
said they would continue to do the job, and that would be really great. And at least they could explain to their wife or their husband or their kids, like, hey, dad or mom has some issues, and I knew it. I knew it going in,
Yep.
and here's what they're trying to do for me. And then it is what it is. At least we can try and prevent the Agent Orange
Right.
50 years now, and we're like, hey, that was probably
Yeah.
bad for you.
Yeah, and that I think that's the I love that the informed consent, which in my opinion, actually we went through the same George Washington University bioethics course, and
Yeah, baby.
actually figuring out what informed consent is and like how awful we are at it in medicine, like it is. I've seen some informed consents done in the ICU for a surgical procedure. I'm like, really?
Yeah,
But like, and that's the thing is like I think taking care of the warfighter, taking care of the service member, like that's the key. Like giving more automatic levers at the VA, so these guys are not like having to like jump through their asses to get their disability rating as for what it should be. Because
right.
guess what? Here's another thing we're really good at, Soft, and I know you are. Um, we don't complain about shit.
No,
We
no.
we're
But
we're very good at masking our problems. Like my own situation on leaving the organization was like, "Hey, I got issues, guys." I presented it in a manner. It blew up in my face, but I was like, "Yeah," because we're really good at compensating. I think
absolutely.
I'd be curious. Have you guys looked at the correlation between special operators, TBI, and then like the loss of that compensatory mechanisms that we had, and what if there's any correlation or causation that can actually be pointed at?
I've never looked at that. I've had conversations with some guys who are expert performers, and we talked about the resilience perspective of
Hmm.
like, you know, you hear about these syndromes in terms of people have TBI, and you'll have a 20-year-old kid who's saying like, "Oh, I have this syndrome and I can't perform anymore." And then you look at a 38-year-old with 19 deployments or 40 deployments, and they're still performing at the highest level. And we start having conversations of like, is there resiliency? Is there a resiliency that the brain can adapt to for people who operate in these types of environments? So, um, I don't know if anybody's looked at your question exactly, but if there's this really great former soft psych who was on a podcast last year, and I listened to it, and he talked about like the soft phenotype and compartmentalization, the ability to like have emotional kill switches and all these things. And I listened to this podcast on a drive with my girlfriend, and then she was just like kind of like documenting the amount of times she was like, "Oh wow, yep,
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 that
yep,
ting
yep,
ding ding.
yeah."
Well,
So
it's funny because when you bring up the 40 deployments, I instantly think of Rock Kelly, a legend amongst men who still drinks coffee and smokes darts like a freaking boss and runs a 4 minute mile
right,
still. I'm
right,
like you're
right.
not human, my guy. So
No.
you touched on the phenotypes. Like I'd be curious actually, like how. That's my next question is like what data like or is anybody looking at genetic markers and potentially using that as part of our assessment and selection process for particular jobs?
I don't know. Allison Brager has talked about genotype selection for certain jobs, specifically like deep space travel.
Yeah.
She's a sleep neuroscientist. This is on a podcast, so I'm happy to share this, that she said this. She's involved in a lot of selection processes. I don't know anything about behind the scenes, and I don't want to say anything on that except for Allison has mentioned in a conversation about deep space travel and like trying to go to Mars, genotype selection for people so that they can succeed better. But
Yeah. No,
I don't know, man, because I don't think genotypically I'm probably I don't think I would have hit.
well, yeah, but to be fair, we don't know. Like again, like
Yeah, yeah.
there's blind spots in the data, like as always.
Right, right, right.
Because it'd just be, like, and to be honest though, it'd be interesting because we have the ability to retrospectively go back because you
Hmm.
like when we sign up, our DNA becomes U.S. government property. Like it's
That's fair.
it is warehoused. It's somewhere like it'd be very interesting to see. And like this is something that I think AI could be actually leveraged against. It's like, all right, let's take all the DNA from our Medal of Honor recipients and see if there's common threads. Like
That'd be interesting.
it's some serious like hypothetical at this point, but when we come to mitigating risk, if we know that we can find these these genetic markers that says this person A is more resilient emotionally, they have the ability to self-protect physically from stuff. All right, this should be one of the considerations, not necessarily the consideration, but part of the consideration of selection
Yeah,
for any
yeah,
particular job. Because, like, yeah, we do psych screens. So, like, why not do the next level, which, again, that's probably will never happen in either of our lifetime. But hey, regardless, it's interesting to think about. That's why
yeah.
we do this.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm going to burp because it's been sitting in here forever. Okay, there we go. I'm back. um, so now I think too, like we're talked about kind of the risk mitigation. Like
Yeah.
that's what like this is all the TBI work is essential to mitigating risk. That being said, since we focus on training and high intensity training, in your opinion, do you think that hard, realistic, high fidelity training is one of the best ways to build resilience prior to a real world incident?
I I'm biased to say yes because that's my only experience. Um, I think that you need to feel certain things um, to see sometimes how your body's going to react or to learn how to work through something. So like where my opinion on this and it's of others as well is it's not that it's the only way, but it's how many reps of that do you need, and then what can you adjust within that high fidelity training to lessen some stuff. So like, for example, you probably need to stand really close to some doors and blow the charge so you can feet so that you can know that you can still pull the trigger extremely
Right.
accurately when you've just ate a charge 2 feet away from you.
Yep.
First, now the thing is, okay, well then do I need to do that 80 times or can I do that one 4 times and the rest can be standoffs?
Yeah.
And then, for our type of stuff, it's like, do I need to jump out of the plane every single time to simulate a airborne casualty or fast rope every single time or whatever, rip the minigun at 100,000 rounds a minute so I can feel what that's like. But I do think having that high fidelity training really matters. I mean, for our example, is the one I talk to people about is, bandwidth of radio management.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, in our line of work, radios are something that become It's insane.
Uh-huh.
And luckily, because of the way we train for real. And so when you get overseas, there's still more radios.
Yep.
There's even more radios. So at least
Yep.
we had a good understanding of like what it's like to have 80 people talking at one time while you're trying to do medicine.
It, it's funny you bring that up because it's one of the things I've found a couple solutions to, like, because the information overload that comes with monitoring seven different radios, like, you got really good at filtering what's important and then isolating. It's like it it's a skill we take for granted. Like, so for you and
Oh,
I
dude.
in the organization we grew up in, like, having seven radios that are global, like the over the horizon comms, like, this guy's speaking Portuguese again. Why am I hearing this?
Yeah.
Like our tax app that we use would always get Brazilian truck drivers for whatever reason. Um, like, it's a skill, and it's a skill
Yeah.
we took for granted. But, like, I see this in the first response space. One of the hardest things to train is situational awareness of media content, for lack of a better term. Like, it's not visual, but it's being, your sensory system is being inundated by it. Um, and my, like, one thing I find for training, like, I'll take the Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas, for instance. I replay body cam footage from that, and there's a bunch of data that comes over the radio that students always miss. I'm like, all right, well, here we go.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that until you're out of a situation, you take it for granted. Um,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I use that example all the time when we train people.
yeah. Actually, yeah. Now that I remember what I want to ask you, so you're going through medical school right now.
Mhm.
Are How many other veterans are in the program with you?
One in my class, and then I have two in my class that are HPSP, which is very exciting. So they're going in for the first time. I got
Nice.
a guy above me who's going in for the first time. And I think that may be it. There might be a couple HPSPs I've missed, and there's maybe one other veteran in the class below me that I think there's a HPSP. Most HPSP though, which is really awesome.
What's HBSP for our
That's the
listeners?
damn acronym on the spot.
Well,
Health Professional Scholarship Program. So it's a scholarship where we pay the military pays for your medical school. It could be civilian. You owe a 1-to-1 ratio back to the military.
okay.
You can go to civilian residency or military residency.
Oh, nice. Sweet. So that being said, is you're around a large population of non-military people entering a very high stress profession.
Yeah,
How much of your cohort are fresh high school grads who have just gone through pre-med and now med school?
a decent amount,
Yeah. And
decent amount, which is very impressive.
how I guess you may be a little biased, but, like, well, first and foremost, are you in a mentorship position for those kind of, like, wet behind the ears newbies?
Yeah, I think I try and share knowledge at appropriate times. I try not to just be the grumpy old guy at all chances, but I
That's
try and
my job.
provide. Yeah, exactly. Daddy Sam. No, I try and provide feedback when appropriate, and even with faculty, I'll talk to faculty about stuff. That's me, I can't help myself. Like
Yeah.
if there's a problem, it doesn't matter who. I say something.
Right. Well, and I guess that's my thing with the I've been in my little military bubble so much, in my first response bubble, so, like, seeing what the gen pop is these days, and to be fair, people going through medical school are also extreme high performers. Uh, what is the I guess what are they doing in medical school? I know you're unique to a program, but, like, stress inoculation. Are you seeing anything happen that in that realm?
No, no. It's from soft to SOM data, from certain qualitative type conversations at soft to SOM. We see this across the board at almost all schools that our folks are enrolled in, which are a lot of schools,
Mhm.
East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. And there's kind of the opposite. It's more discussion of we talk more about how it's gonna be okay when we're sad and defeated and how we're going to try to take steps to prevent burnout, but not a lot of discussion about how to attack a scary problem set, persevere through it, and then put on the mitigation stuff
Right.
to prevent burnout. And that's where I think the major flaws is in academia right now. And I think, I'll give kudos to my school. We had conversation about like, hey, everybody's going to lose a patient no matter what specialty you go to, and you're going to be on rotations. You're going to rotate every
Yeah.
specialty, so someone's going to die. And we had physicians talk about like what it was like for their first patient dying, how they run patient deaths now as an attending, what they wish they could do better as attending. So they were really like vulnerable and humble and
Yeah.
honest about where they've been good, where they've been bad. And then I've chimed in on a lot of those conversations myself, having lost people, civilian side, military side. Then some of them are your friends, some are
Yeah.
complete strangers, and that's a totally different problem set. So I think that is a huge challenge in academia right now is we're not doing that. I think with clerkships, you rotate in the specialties, so you can count that as a stress inoculation, but that's not, I don't think that's appropriate. That's like taking a
Yeah.
medic, putting them with the senior medic, and then being like, follow him around for the day. He's going to tell you what to do, and then you just keep making mistakes. Like you
Right.
can call that stress inoculation, but there's no real,
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
that's it's something that I've noted. Yeah, like in residency programs, like they're kind of like a graduate school, you start your intern year and you're just thrown to the wolves for essentially like
Yeah.
some of the ground rounds that I've sat in at University of Cincinnati, like I can't help but laugh because of the like it's like a shark being chummed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the attendings are
Yeah.
like, yes, excellent, Will. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's yeah, what I look at where we grew up, some of the military training we do, like and actually working at the Medical Simulation Training Center in Fort Lewis, where like all of our test outs are very like controlled and like benign, to be honest. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're doing ourselves a favor by making like, things less stressful.
Yeah. I sometimes I think some stress is important, but I also think where we go really wrong with our medical training, and then you see this permeate into like the law enforcement and um, pre-hospital training when we want to run trauma lanes, is because of the way the military's done it, or especially soft, too wrong for too long, which is, okay, we're going to put you through a trauma lane. They're going to have all their limbs missing, plus two in the chest. We need to do blood. We're going to make you cry. Oh, we're going to put fucking strobe lights on. Someone's going to be shooting a mini in the background, and we're going to have radios. And like, that's going to be your first time.
Yeah.
Versus, and Stephen Rush gets a lot of credit for this because he was the one who was like, we got to put a stop to this. And like,
Yep.
how do you actually evaluate people successfully? Give them the one GSW to the chest, give them the extremity hemorrhage, give them the crazy chaos. But your goal for that person needs to be really small.
Yes.
They put a tourniquet on right correctly, and then did they recognize the person needed blood? That can be the two main objectives of that entire freaking trauma line, and that would
Yep.
be a W.
Yep.
But we've done that wrong for so long that we want guys to come out with perfection per lane per attempt, and I
And
think it's stupid.
man, you hit the like I love it, dude. We're hitting all the same vibes, man. Like it's yeah, like
I
in
give it to
medicine.
people.
No, I yeah, well, I tried to. I think I did it
You were
initially,
great.
then
Yeah.
then I quickly learned that like I'm causing more damage to these guys because I'm not training them. I'm just berating them, like and
Yeah.
breaking spirits. Like, and to be honest, like I've done some serious CASEVACs, and guess what? Like missing GSWs to the pelvis. Guess what? The guy still lived despite every effort of me trying to
Right.
kill him with my ignorance.
Right.
I think that's another big thing in medicine that we fail is like very little of what we do actually changes outcomes. Like
Yeah.
at the acute level, chronic we can argue all day long, but like you can also argue like how many of the compensatory mechanisms am I taking away from this person by putting them on a long term pressor, blah 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 blah. Like it that's the issue with medicine is like medicine we want to do, but sometimes I
Right.
think for me like as a trainer, the hardest skill to teach someone is how to do nothing.
Oh, dude, that's impossible. I mean, we train that into the medics, right? We tell them since like AIT and SOC, I'm like, you better find something to do. Like, there's always something to do. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah,
eh,
it's well, and to be fair though, like I think that is honestly a byproduct of the graduate medical education programs where, all right, every R1, every R2, every R3, they need to do this number of procedures. I have to do this many
yeah,
central lines. I have to do this many intubations. It gets spilled down to paramedicine. Like, so instead of clinically indicated, like the patient absolutely needs this, it's like, okay, criteria have been met for this. We don't have the data to show whether there's potential harm because it's really hard to correlate all that stuff. But it's like, all right, how many people would be just fine if we didn't do anything versus, okay, I'm going to RSI, like rapid sequence intubation. I'm going to drop a central line. We're going to do this, that, and the other thing. Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
and you can't correlate that. And to be fair, with medical training, like you have to have people who can do stuff with their hands, so they have to do things.
Yeah.
But it's that vicious cycle where, for me, like, yeah, teaching the medics how to just sit there and observe, like get a vital sign trend. Like to me, like that's where like I did some remote austere medical work, and what we focused on for 2 weeks was like every day, every morning and afternoon, hey, you guys get a set of vitals. And that's a skill that we've like, shit, man, look in the hospital. How many people are actually taking accurate vitals?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Which is a crazy statement. But it's
well,
very true.
Well, yeah,
It's
it's because to be like that's like you think about that prolonged field care, an unstable casualty. You're supposed to trend that patient. Like, okay, how often are we supposed to take vital signs on an unstable casualty?
I mean, for
What
like
what
our
have we been
standard,
taught? Yeah, what have we been taught?
I remember like every 3 to 5, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly,
yeah, every
unstable.
three to
Yeah.
five. Like, so literally, if you're doing vital signs right, you're immediately starting your next set of vitals because it takes 3 to 5 minutes to get a set of vital signs.
Yeah, that's a good
So,
point.
so we've already trained it. It's like, because so if anybody can take a full accurate set of vital signs in less than 3 minutes, you're not doing it right because you're not doing your 1 minute counts on a physical pulse and all this other stuff. It makes me chuckle.
Yeah, and from a
Um,
trainer perspective, I was with Paul at a training event, Paul Luce, and
yeah,
I was very impressed with how slow he gave vital sign changes. And I was like, man, all these training events I've been to, and these guys are like immediately 140 heart rate, 90, 90 over nothing, and or like 60 over nothing, and blah blah. And you're like, and you go
it's not.
treat real patients, and you're like, oh wait, what?
Yeah,
This guy's
it's
like kind of
slow.
okay right now?
Yeah,
What
yeah. No,
do
like
you mean?
yeah, like having that's another thing that like about the training space that drives me nuts is we artificially accelerate stuff that never happens that fast. Like attention pneumothorax happening in 5 minutes or less. I'm like, I've never seen it. And
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
like it's creating training scars that then people carry over to practice. Like we had an incident happen out here where an accident happened. Someone's common iliac was shredded by a piece of hot steel. Guess what happens when your major vessels and your closed loop circulatory system fails? Like you go unresponsive. What did homie get? 2 needles?
Two.
Because no, it wasn't a respiratory problem. There was no holes in the box, my guy.
Yeah,
Hey, it's
yeah.
you went through SOCM, I went through SOCM. Like we look at some of like to be fair to me, like I looked at SOCM as like it's just a continuation of assessment and selection.
Hmm.
Because is there good medicine taught there? Absolutely. Lots of friends
Yeah.
work there, but it's also still just like you're doing a sequence.
Yeah, you're doing a sequence. The sequence works. The sequence does work, but you can't train clinical acumen without without real patients. And um, the model works though. I get in these arguments with friends all the time, and but you have to say like, hey, they're keeping people alive. So the model is working.
Right.
We're just obsessive, so we have to say, how can it be better?
Yeah, of course.
Um,
But
so
to be fair, I think
that's the point.
that's what we do. Like
Yeah.
we analyze processes. That's why you're going to medical school, and that's why I sit here on a podcast because I'm too lazy to go to medical school.
Med school is a beast, dude. It's a different.
Well, no, Sean Clerk and I visited him when I had to do a CDMRP grant review, and the poor kid's like, "Oh, this is hard." I'm like, "Yeah, Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not chill.
can I just get shot at? That's so much easier." I'm like, "Yes." Like that's the beautiful thing
Yes, yes,
about
it is.
firefights is they're so linear. It's so easy. Like I'll take a firefight all day, every day over like some deep thoughts.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
cool, man. That's yeah. It's funny to think that kind of just like how our career progression and journeys have gone, and like it's
Hmm.
awesome to hear like some of your lessons learned from like when you were running training scenarios and the Steve Rushisms of like, hey, it's fine to just run a simple lane.
Yep.
my favorite thing, actually, I was just over working with Nick Graham in the Netherlands, and I favorite game to play. It's not really a game, but like give someone a medical patient when they're expecting trauma.
Oh, we just did that last week. One of my I had buddies were in town. They were doing some training, so they invited me to come help, and that's exactly what they did. And I was like, "Oh, this is great.
Yeah,
This
it's
is great."
well, like Alex Hall, for instance, like the scenario they run at Soamic where the pregnant lady traumatic injury and then goes into labor on the helicopter. And then oh guess what? You're dealing with the postpartum hemorrhage as well. Like because
Yeah,
hey, like OBGYN, like there's some serious trauma that goes on in that
100%.
service. And it's like, and ironically, like I actually had that casualty one time where there was a pregnant lady who got shot, and I'm like, I was still very junior to the unit. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, literally, what I did as little as humanly possible because I did not want to deliver a baby in the back of a helicopter because she was very pregnant and very like I'll give the Afghanis all the shout outs. They're hard as nails because her femur was completely destroyed and she just like stone faced. It's like good for you,
That's
man.
wild.
Yeah, no,
Good for them.
yeah. So that being said, like from your experience and like you're going through medical school right now, like we'll close. We're getting close on time, but we'll end the heavy discussion with this. Like, what do you think is some of the best ways to like, get people to think critically as opposed to reactionary and following an algorithm when it comes to pre-hospital medicine?
Um, well, this is where I'll be controversial again. All medicine is an algorithm. It's all an algorithm. You have to
Okay.
use algorithms. You like I actually hate the you just do an algorithmic medicine. That's stupid. Yes, of course I'm doing algorithmic medicine. What are you talking about? I see blood. Next step, stop blood. How I get from A to B is whatever, but it's
Right.
all an algorithm. So you could call it heuristics if you want to be more fancy, but it's all algorithms. So algorithms are important, actually.
Yes.
It's the critical thinking is when to deviate from the algorithm that you're used to, but also when um, it's just when to deviate from the algorithm and when to stop yourself from being a proceduralist
Right.
and actually be more clinical. The
Nice.
best way to create that, that one's tough because of exactly your point. You'd have to revolutionize the training pipelines to achieve that, and I don't think we have the manpower, the time to pull that off. So it comes down to having really good what do they call it in the police? The FOs, like field officers, whatever,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
FTOs, field training
FTOs. Yeah.
officer. Yeah, like it's whatever your flavor is. Like if you're a pre-hospital civilian guy listening, or you're a Fed guy or a military guy, like it comes down to having that good senior medic or that good team leader to say like, "Hey man, welcome to our unit now. Everything that you just learned, some of it's good, and we're gonna break a lot of it off.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna teach you about that's great at your school. You guys did this type of pain management. I'm going to teach you about real pain management. I'm going
Right.
to teach you about timing and onset and duration.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got to go to some pretty advanced medical training and like that's what we did, dude. The first thing we worked on was how to do a tourniquet out of an IFAC. Blew my mind. I was like, I'm finally here. We're gonna do this really crazy trauma training. It's gonna be magic. And they were like, hey, we're gonna see if you can know how to use someone's IFAC and take a tourniquet out of it. And
Right.
then pain management was one of the biggest things we talked about constantly. It was like everybody coming out of Stockholm is terrible at pain management
Oh, 100%.
because we just put lollipop or we think we just give them a shitload of ketamine. So to get back on track, apologies.
Oh, you're good,
Um,
man.
I think that's kind of my answer to think critically is one, you have to master the basics to be able to think critically. You can't you can't deviate if you don't know the basic, right? Like I think and you could take the chef model, dude. Michelin
Yeah.
star chefs, what are they all? They're all geniuses because of their creativity. But when you look at the technique, they're fundamentally ridiculously good. And where they make their most money is like they make the best sauce on the planet
Yep.
and they're just using the basic techniques, but they're obsessing about every single detail about it.
Right.
So to be able to think critically about in a medical perspective, if you can get the basics done extremely well, and then you think real deeply about that basic. Shout out to, one of my seniors, Ian A. My boy made me do tourniquets for 3.5 hours on a TBI once. And I've never, before that, I was like, I do a tourniquet fucking blindfolded, upside down, sideways in space. This man made me and my partner do 3 hours of tourniquets and pushed the limit on perfection.
Yep.
And that allowed me to critically think about tourniquets in a new way. So
Nice.
stuff like that. Me and my other buddy Justin, we did 8-bag drills, dude. A
Hmm.
whole weekend, a whole Saturday. We spent the day trying to figure out how fast can I get my 8-bag off my back and open it. That's
Hmm.
how you can critically think
Hmm.
when you're more informed and you know what the fuck is actually going on.
Hell yeah, dude. And you hit the nail on the head with mentorship. So like FTOs,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
having mentors, and that's something I think we fail at across an entire enterprise, pre-hospital enterprise, is like mentors, like having those healthy mentors, those like the healthy humility is the term that I like to use.
yeah.
It's like, hey man, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm not perfect. And like to be fair, dude, like I really appreciate you taking the time. Like it's awesome to see like how
Yeah.
your trajectory is going. I like to think I helped a little bit here, but also too like
Huge, massive.
I also am like and now appreciate your like the back like downstream effects of like you backwards mentoring me now and like seeing what you're working on and getting to like to be fair ride your coattails of greatness because like you come on here have a chat and dude I'm super excited to see where everything goes at the
Appreciate
end of
it.
this at the end of this episode we'll throw the soft to psalm info up there at the end so you guys can
Thank
get
you.
some deets and info out there if anybody's interested if you want I can throw your socials up if people want to get a hold of you completely up to you but
For
Ricky
sure.
from the bottom of my heart thank you for coming on having a chat about this stuff great to see you actually are you going to Soma?
I can't. My school
Ah,
won't let me go for the
all
week.
right, all right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we will meet again in person for seltzers and not
Of course.
non-alcoholic beverages and no caffeine because it's bad for you.
I'm a caffeine fiend.
Nah, dude, I'm on 600 milligrams today. I'm like, okay, my heart's gonna explode. Jason Reese, I need you. Cardiologist,
Yeah.
save me. All right,
Yeah.
my dude. Again,
All right,
thanks for
homie.
coming on. We'll talk soon, and we'll see you on the other side, my guy.
Sounds good, homie.